Evening, everybody. Welcome to this University of Northampton Master of Business Administration webinar. My name is Professor Tim Campbell. I'm a visiting Professor of International Management at the university and a tutor on the MBA program. So thanks for joining me from wherever you are tonight. And I'm going to take you through some key highlights from the program from my perspective. But then most importantly, just 10 or 15 minutes of that. And then we'll look at questions, any questions that you might have after that. So first bit, before I get on to talking about the University of Northampton, let me just spend just one slide on what Stafford does, because you'll be here at this webinar tonight because of the good people at Stafford. So it's important to know what their role is and what the university's role is. So Stafford has been, as it says on my slide here, the very first provider of distance learning in the Middle East, established way back in 1993, and you will certainly, I'm sure, have had a look at the website, and you would have seen that we're the resource centre for, Stafford is a resource centre rather, for 5 different universities and has programs from certificates all the way up to doctorate level. And what Stafford does is that it's primarily involved in marketing the university's programs and the student recruitment and administration onto those programs, because that's a role that's very difficult for the UK universities to do from their home campuses, for the University of Northampton, for example. So that's the role of Stafford, as being a local presence. But it's very important to note that once you actually enroll in the University of Northampton's MBA program, you are entirely a student of the university. All of the academics, the award itself comes entirely from the university, and you have access to all of the university's resources. So that's just a slide about how Stafford fits into it. Let's start talking about Northampton now. The university itself you will find in a town called Northampton, which is on my map there, being pointed to by a big arrow, which is about 100 kilometers north of London, about an hour on the train. And there in Northampton, you used to find the university just on the outskirts of the town and the country, but they built an entirely new campus recently, just 2 years ago it opened, right in the middle of the town. It's a $500 million investment, and if you look at that slide, it's everything within those red dots, and it really is quite a fantastic place. And in fact, if I quickly look back to that first slide, that's where I'm standing outside of just one of the entrances, just after it opened there. So that's where you find the university itself. You can, of course, go to the University of Northampton's website and find out all about the university itself. I've just picked out a few pointers. The first is that education in Northampton actually dates back an awfully long time, right back to the 13th century. But the modern University of Northampton really traces its origins to 100 years ago, when there were technical institutes and things of that type. So the modern university dates from about 100 years. And there's about 14,000 students and 1,500 staff. It's been awarded the Gold Award, and that's the government's Teaching Excellence Framework rankings. You can either be gold, silver, or bronze. It has been given the top award of gold, and this is an important ranking. There are only 2 rankings that you should pay any attention to. One is the Teaching Excellence Framework, and the other is the Research Excellence Framework, because those 2 rankings are mandatory and run by the UK government, or run on behalf of the UK government. So they are official rankings, if you like, the only official rankings. And for you guys doing the taught course, the Teaching Excellence Framework is, of course, the most important for you. And just the last thing I've put on my slide, the university has also been shortlisted for the 3 years in a row for Business School of the Year. Only 6 business schools get nominated out of more than 120 in the UK each year. And not so long ago, University of Northampton managed it 3 years in a row. So as I say, please do have a look at the university's website itself for lots more little facts and figures like that about the university. Because what we're really here to chat about is the MBA program. And there it is, in all its glory. There's 8 modules, And you start on the top left of that screen as you look at it. We've got critical issues in business. That's where your MBA journey starts. And then about every 8 to 10 weeks, you move on to the next module and you make your way around until you get to the business research project. And just a word about the MBA program itself. It's a nice mix of traditional MBA teaching, and the MBA, when it first came about more than 100 years ago, it was all about how we can actually make better managers in any type of organization, big, small, public, private, whatever. And so to do that, they must understand the functions of business. So in any MBA program, you'll see something about people, HRM, human resource management. You'll see something about marketing. You'll see something about strategy, finance and accounting, etc. These functions of business, and that is all there in this MBA program. But then you've also got these contemporary or these newer issues we talk about, such as in critical issues in business, leadership. Leadership is actually a relatively new subject within business and management. It didn't used to be talked about until reasonably recently. But then there's also innovation and risk and all sorts of other things. So it's a nice program, and you make your way from one end to the other. Just a bit more a little bit more about how it's taught. So it takes 18 months from one end to the other. So as you'll see from the previous slide, there's 8 workshops. And each workshop each module rather, starts with a 2-day weekend workshop. When I say weekend, it's the weekend here in the UAE. It's a Friday and a Saturday. So that's where the module starts. And then once you finish that 2-day face-to-face workshop, you'll use the online learning materials, access to the tutor, you'll complete the assignments, and then about 8 to 10 weeks later, you'll come back and do the next module and start again with a 2-day face-to-face workshop. And you make your way like that. So if I go back to that, here we are. We go back to that slide, you start with critical issues, 2-day workshop, hand in the assignment, 8 to 10 weeks later, you're on to managing organizational behavior, same thing, etc. So it's a nice program because you're knocking off or finishing one module at a time. Next start date. So we're up to intake 25, would you believe? And we have 3 intakes a year. So this program's been running for more than 8 years, the UAE intake, so for a long time. I don't have an exact start date yet, but we're likely to have the start date and the full timetable in about a week. So as soon as we get that, your academic consultant at Stafford will send it straight to you. But prepare that the next intake will be early November, but of course we do need application documents long before that. And I'll talk about what we need to apply in a moment. In bold, at the very bottom there, please, as you would expect, we've always held face-to-face workshops in the UAE, but of course at the moment they're being held virtually. So using the university's virtual learning environment, you still have that 2-day workshop where you still have that input from the teacher, but it's done virtually using Blackboard Collaborate. Okay, so please bear that in mind. They will be virtual until further notice, until we get further clarity about what's happening around us. Okay, doke. So what happens in these workshops? You have a different teacher for each workshop. Each will be an expert in their topic, of course. And they'll teach them slightly differently depending on what it is. But if I'm to generalize, these are the sorts of things we do in workshops. We introduce the key concepts. We use things like short case studies, exercises, business games. We demonstrate where we want you to find resources, how you find your ebooks and articles and things like that. And a very important part of the workshop is also to tell you exactly how we want you to do the assignments. So I'm to sort of summarize what we do in these workshops. These are the sorts of things. It's not just somebody talking for 2 days straight. There's a lot more to it than that. And there is a great deal of student satisfaction with these workshops, over 95%. Assessment, all of the modules are assessed through some form of an assignment. So it might be an essay, it might be a case study, it could be a report. For the finance module, one of the assignments is a multi-choice quiz that you do online. So there's all sorts of various assignments, but there's no exams. There's nowhere where you sit down and write for 2 hours and hand in your paper. The reason for that is Northampton's more about allowing students to actually spend the time thinking about what they're writing, to research what they're writing, and to construct what they're writing into a report or an essay or a case study. The problem with exams is they tend more to focus on how much you can remember about a particular subject. So Northampton prefers assignments because that tends to get you thinking a little bit more. And for the business research project, that's your big assignment. That some of you will know that as a thesis or a dissertation, and that's approximately 15,000 words. And when you get to that module, you will have a supervisor from the university who will work with you on that. So that's assessment. Entry criteria is fairly usual for an MBA program. Standard entry was that you'd have a bachelor's degree and 2 years of relevant work experience. But if you don't have that bachelor's degree, you'd be what we call non-standard, and then we're looking for at least 5 years of relevant work experience. And when I say relevant, I mean that the applicant can demonstrate managerial responsibilities. You may not have the word manager in your job title, but as long as you can demonstrate these responsibilities of management, such as planning work and organizing, leading people, controlling what's being done, these types of things, then that's what we're looking for. And I'm sure most of you will find that you actually do have those responsibilities in your job somewhere. Lots and lots of support. There's the international program leader. That's a lady called Rani, who you will meet in the business research project module. She's the lady from the University of Northampton on the campus that looks after us. Then you've got someone locally, that's me, who looks after the program more locally. I live here in the UAE. And then every tutor has its own expert, every module rather has its expert tutor. At administration, you've got all the resources at the university itself, and then plus locally at Stafford. If you're having trouble finding something, we've also got administrators here who can help point you in the right direction at the university. The virtual learning environment that we use is something called Northampton Integrated Learning Environment, called NILE. That's where every module has a NILE site, and on that we post anything we think is useful for you. Lecture slides, it's where we post the assignments, and when you submit your assignments, there might be videos, there could be readings, there could be whatever we like, we'll post on that site for you. And the university has a very extensive online library that has all the resources you will need to complete the assessments. Okay, last couple of things from me. Why the Northampton MBA? The first thing is a very competitive price for this type of a fly-in faculty model. Of course, fly-in faculty when they're allowed to fly in again, virtual at the moment, but it is a face-to-face. It's not an online program. It is a part-time taught program. So for this type of price, it is a very competitive price for a good UK governmental university. And please do look at the Stafford Global website for the latest fees, because they can change between intakes. So just to make sure you have the absolute up-to-date fees. The other good things about it is the duration. 18 months is, I've found, is just about the right length of time for students. I've taught on many different MBA programs over the years, some of them 3 years, and some full-time programs that are only 1 year long. I find 18 months for part-time program, everybody's working on the program, is just about right. It's not so long that you lose motivation, and it's not too short that you simply can't fit everything in with all of your other work and family commitments. So I find that's a good, that's a nice aspect to the program. As I mentioned, there's lots of support, the teaching's very good, and the assessment as well. It's nice that they use assignments rather than exams. And just a last word from me, that the program strongly emphasizes vocational, job learning, practical stuff. We don't forget about the theories, but as well as the theories. So that means what you're going to learn on this program, you're going to be able to apply the very next day in the workplace. And I put here that this is attractive to employers who are more interested in practical knowledge. It also makes studying for the MBA yourselves more enjoyable and relevant when you can actually think about how this actually works in the real world. Okie dokie, that is fantastic. Let me check the time. Oh, I'm about spot on 15 minutes. That's pretty good. So here's the most important bit then. it's any questions. And the easiest way to do that is if you use your question box there on the right and just type me any questions that you've got, then I can have a look. Let me just bring them up. Oh, what a lot of questions. Okie dokie. Right, let me have a look at them. Okay, exemptions. Yes, if you've completed part of an MBA or some modules from another university, if they match to the University of Northampton program, it is possible that you can get exemptions. So for those students who have perhaps done 1 or 2 modules of an MBA somewhere else, you could look to get exemptions on the MBA program if they match. For example, if you've done an accounting and finance module somewhere else, it's likely we'll be able to match that to the University of Northampton's accounting and finance module, and it can be exempt. So yes, we can give exemptions if you've already studied at this level before. My next question, will online learning be on the degree certificate and transcript? No, it won't. As I mentioned, it's very important to remember this isn't an online program. It's a taught part-time program. So nowhere will it say online. Do we accept exemptions based on extensive managerial work experience? Not on work experience. We don't give exemptions because although you may have had many years studying a particular topic, such as marketing, for example, you may not have covered the theories that we would cover in that module. So we don't give exemptions based on managerial work experience. Let me just pick another couple of questions. The maximum time you can complete the MBA, well, it's designed to be done in 18 months. And I always say just to keep up with that 18-month timetable. But if something happens and you need to take a study break, that's perfectly possible. And the maximum time that you can take is 5 years. I always forget this. It's either 4 or 5 years. I'm sure it's 5 years. Anyway, we can check that for you. But there's certainly ways that you could, if something does come up and you have to take a break in your studies, that you can. But I always say, make sure you keep up with the timetable. It's the best thing to do. And here's a very good question, of course. And as I mentioned this, you notice that there are workshops, but due to COVID, will these take place? No, they won't at the moment, as I mentioned. They're being done virtually. So remember I mentioned that NILE site? A part of that site, there's a little button called a virtual classroom. So through that site, you'll click the button, the virtual classroom, and you'll see your tutor coming to you from the UK. So they'll be done virtually until we all get over the situation and we can go back to the face-to-face. So for now, please do remember they will be virtual. Oh, here's a good job. Will this MBA question rather? Will this MBA secure me a job internationally? I would certainly hope so. I can't promise that, but you will be doing an MBA from a UK governmental university, and that's got to hold you in good stead for a job wherever you want to be. British education is still considered very good quality. Somebody saying, can you speak to a tutor virtually due to COVID? Yeah, absolutely. You'll be, as I say, you'll be communicating through the NILE site, through the virtual classrooms or the emails or discussion boards or anything. Absolutely, yeah. The tutor is responsible from when the module starts to when you hand in your assignment. So you have access to them at any stage on them. And as I mentioned, the workshops are synchronous, live time, real time. What else have we got here? Can you take 2 modules at the same time so you can finish the program in a shorter period of time? No, you can't. No, and I wouldn't recommend that. It would just be too much to try and concentrate on. You must follow along with the sequence of 1 module at a time. What is the difference between Executive MBA and the one we offer? What we offer actually is an Executive MBA. We don't actually just call it an Executive MBA. We just call it an MBA. However, officially it is an Executive MBA, but on your certificate and transcript it will just say MBA. But if you wanted a letter from the university to actually say it actually is the Executive MBA, that's fine. But it's because that Executive MBAs, when they first came about, were supposed to be for the most senior management in organization, and MBAs were just for everybody else, generally your middle and going into senior positions. But that distinction has been blurred over the years, and really they're almost the same now. They're just the words are almost used interchangeably when I look practically at these programs. So there was a distinction to begin with, but now they're almost the same. Executive MBA, MBA, it doesn't seem to make much of a difference. In my opinion, is the MBA difficult? Not if you study hard. We have very good pass rates, and if you do the work, you should be absolutely fine. The vast majority of our students are. But don't forget, it is a master's degree at a UK university, so you can't just skip through it easily. You have to put in the work, then you'll be good. Why does the MBA not have AMBER accreditation? Yeah, many of you might be aware of the AMBER accreditation, the Association of MBA Accreditation. It's a private thing. It's a private accreditation that's done by an organization where you pay them money and they'll come and audit you, and as if you pass, they'll give you the AMBER stamp. That's not a path that Northampton's wanted to go down because they're already an accredited UK British university. So they didn't really see the need to go down this route. And AMBER can also dictate what you're teaching and assess on an MBA, which again wasn't something that they wanted to do. Let me take a few more questions. Do you get constructive feedback on your assignment if I fail it? Oh, that's a good question. And do I have a second chance to submit? Yes, you certainly get feedback on your assignments. If you don't pass the first time, you get an automatic chance to resit where you'll be able to submit again. And you will certainly get feedback on both of them. Ayers, I would like to know about PSW in UK now. What is PSW? Tell me what that is, Ayers. I'm not sure. Just type it on the questions there. Fatima is saying, if I cannot attend the graduation in the UK due to COVID, can I get my degree certificate? Yeah, it'll be sent to you. Even if we get over this whole COVID situation, you can go to the graduation, and I certainly suggest you do because it's a really, really good day. I've been to a couple of the graduations, seen our students graduate. It's a fantastic day. But if you can't make the graduation, then the degrees will be couriered to you. As that stands with the COVID situation, I'm not quite sure what the university is doing with the graduations this year. I believe they've postponed it, I think is the last I heard. But hopefully by the time you graduate, we won't even be talking about COVID anymore, I hope. All right, IS, thanks. Post-study work. So I would like to know about post-study work in UK now. Sorry, I don't really know what you're meaning there. So does that mean after you've finished your MBA, would you get a job there? I don't know. Hang on, let me see. Okay, let me see if I can get, hang on. He's got his hand up. Let me unmute your mic. Maybe if you can tell me, I might be able to understand you better. Okay, go ahead.
Yes, hi, good evening.
Good evening, Ayers. Go ahead. I didn't quite understand your question, so you explain it to me and I might understand better.
Yeah, before I had studied there in UK before for 2 years. During our time, there was post-study work visa for students. So the government changed their rules.
That's absolutely right. I understand exactly what you mean now, Ayers. Yes, the government changed the rules back quite recently, and I seem to remember now, if you study full-time on campus, you will get a 2-year work visa. Okay. But that's not available for this program because you're not studying on campus. You'll be studying at a distance.
What if I started this program online and I shifted the program to on-campus studies? Will I be eligible for post-study work then?
I see what you mean. Oh, that's a difficult one, Ayers. I'm not sure. I would say you probably would be. So, for example, let's say you did 3 or 4 modules of our program, doing it, distance learning, and then you switched full-time to on-campus.
Yes, of course.
I honestly, I would think that would be okay, but I'm not entirely sure. I'll show you my email address on the next slide, Ayers. just send me an email and I can check with the university for you.
That's so kind of you.
No problem at all, no problem. Okay, thanks, Sayers. Nice to talk to you. I will check that out for you. It's a good question. I've not had that one before, so I will check that for you. I've just got a couple more here. Where am I? Oh yeah, someone's asking about the top-up. Yes, you can do a top-up. If you've done a postgraduate diploma at level 7, you just need to do 2 modules, critical issues and the business research project. And that timetable, again, in about a week, I'll have that timetable for you. So for those students who've already done a level 7 postgraduate diploma, it's absolutely fine. You can top up. You just need to do those 60 credits, those 2 modules, critical issues, business research project. Okie dokie. I think I've got most of them now. Okay, anyway, if there is anything I've forgotten, here, I was promising I asked my email address. There I go. Just drop me an email and I can let you know. And if there is something I don't know, like that question, I'll find out for you. That's absolutely fine. So I hope I will see you all at the next intake anyway, which will be in November, as I say. I really hope it'll be face-to-face, but with this whole COVID situation, I'm afraid just nobody knows. So if it's not face-to-face, well, I'll see you virtually anyway. Okay, thanks very much for listening, guys, and I hope I'll see you soon. Bye for now.